There is a moment when scrolling stops being entertainment and becomes measurement. Hamna notices it one evening while sitting on her couch. She sees a $150 outfit, then a $12 little treat. A luxury apartment with sunlight pouring through enormous windows. Someone's perfect morning routine. Then another things I bought this month video. First Hamna is just watching. Then something shifts. She looks around her own apartment. Suddenly, the ordinary things around her feel a little less impressive. Her routine feels smaller. Her life feels slower. And she hasn't spent $1. That's the strange part. The spending begins before the cart. Before the checkout. Sometimes before she even admits she wants anything. Because social media doesn't just show Hamna what she could buy. It quietly changes what she believes she should have. And that transformation doesn't happen all at once. It happens in levels. It usually starts with, I was only looking. A TikTok recommends a product. An Instagram reel shows an outfit. Hamna taps the link. $24. She thinks, it's only $24. Maybe she doesn't even plan to buy it. She just adds it to the cart. That feels harmless. But exposure creates familiarity. And the more familiar something becomes, the less strange ownership starts to feel. Hamna closes the app. She tells herself she'll think about it later. But 2 days later she sees the same product again. Now it feels familiar. Almost like something she already owns. She buys it. Doesn't feel like a financial decision. Feels like a tiny reward. But two $25 impulse purchases every week becomes roughly $200 a month. That's $2,400 a year. Money that can disappear through purchases that never felt important enough to remember. The expensive part isn't the $25. It's teaching yourself to buy automatically. Because cheap purchases become expensive when they become automatic. But temptation isn't the level that costs Hamna the most. Then temptation becomes comparison. Hamna scrolls again. Someone is spending $300 on dinner. Someone else is showing a perfect apartment. Another person is taking a casual vacation. Then there's an $180 skincare routine. A new car. A kitchen that looks like a showroom. None of it feels like an instruction. Nobody tells Hamna, you need this. But together the images create a new benchmark. Suddenly, things she never wanted start feeling like things she should have. Her apartment hasn't changed. Her income hasn't changed. Her life hasn't suddenly become worse. But the way she sees it has. She starts noticing the things she doesn't have instead of the things she already does. The feed doesn't have to tell you that you're behind. It only has to show you enough people who look ahead. And once Hamna's definition of normal changes, spending stops being about wanting. It starts becoming about catching up. Then comes justification. Hamna has a difficult week at work. One night, she orders food because she's exhausted. The next stressful week, she opens a shopping app. A promotion makes her think about upgrading her phone. A lonely evening leads to an online order she never planned to make. And suddenly every purchase has a reason. I worked hard. I deserve this. Sounds reasonable. It even sounds healthy. But sometimes the object isn't really the point. The purchase is emotional regulation disguised as self-care. Imagine Hamna spending $70 as a reward after every difficult week. That's $280 a month. Around $3,360 a year. The number sounds different when she sees it all at once. But the real question isn't even the money. It's the feeling underneath it. Hamna starts noticing something uncomfortable. When she's already having a great day, she rarely feels the urge to buy something. The urge appears when she's stressed, bored, lonely, overwhelmed. Would she still buy it if she were already having a great day? Sometimes we don't buy things because we want them. We buy them because we want to feel different. But eventually the product stops being the point. Then the product becomes a signal. Hamna notices this when she starts looking at her purchases differently. She's no longer asking, do I need this? She's asking, what does owning this say about me? A designer jacket, a premium phone upgrade, the $7 coffee, a luxury gym membership, the perfectly aesthetic apartment, restaurants that look effortless on camera. Even quiet luxury can become another form of keeping score. The danger is subtle. Hamna isn't necessarily buying for the object anymore. She's buying the identity attached to it. The version of herself she imagines wearing the jacket, using the phone, walking into the gym, living in that apartment, looking successful without having to say it. And the more she spends to create that image, the harder it becomes to admit that the image is costing her. Because status spending doesn't necessarily disappear when income rises, can grow with it. When Hamna earns more, she doesn't automatically feel richer. She simply discovers more expensive versions of the things she already wanted. Then expensive becomes normal. Imagine Hamna earns $3,500 a month. Then her income rises to $5,000. Feels like freedom. An extra $1,500 every month. But slowly her lifestyle absorbs it. A better apartment. More delivery. More subscriptions. More shopping. More travel. More convenience. Nothing feels outrageous. That's what makes it dangerous. Her income increased, but her freedom barely moved. Hamna looks at her bank account one month and realizes something uncomfortable. She's earning more than she used to, but she doesn't feel much safer. She doesn't feel much more secure. She just has more expensive habits. That extra $500 a month doesn't look dramatic today. But every month she spends it, she's also giving up what that money could become years from now. A raise can make you richer, or simply make your expensive habits more affordable. And eventually, the frightening part isn't what Hamna is spending. It's what her future self has quietly learned to expect. Then the bill arrives later. It's the end of the month. Hamna opens her credit card statement. $47 here. $83 there. $129 somewhere else. She remembers almost none of it. None of those purchases felt expensive when she made them. But together, those forgotten decisions can become $700, $800, even $1,000. And suddenly the question changes. At the moment of purchase, it's only $40. At the end of the month, where did my money go? That's the psychological trap. The reward is immediate. The consequence is delayed. The problem with impulse spending isn't that the pleasure disappears. It's that the payment doesn't. And by the time Hamna sees the total, she's not just looking at what she bought. She's looking at dozens of tiny decisions that felt harmless in isolation. And this is where the entire ladder becomes visible. Suddenly Hamna understands. She wasn't always buying clothes, food, gadgets, or experiences. Sometimes she was buying belonging, confidence, relief, status, validation, or simply the feeling that she was finally catching up. That's what makes social media spending so difficult to recognize. The product is visible. The emotion underneath it isn't. The most expensive thing social media can sell you isn't a product. It's a new definition of who you should be. And Hamna realizes something else. The answer isn't deleting every app. It's not never spending again. It's learning to recognize which emotion is reaching for her wallet. The transformation doesn't require perfect discipline. It requires a pause. So before Hamna buys something, she starts asking herself 3 questions. Would I want this if I had never seen it online? Would I still buy it tomorrow? And am I buying the object, or the identity attached to it? She notices something interesting. The pause doesn't always make her say no. Sometimes she still buys the thing. But now she's choosing it. She's no longer reacting automatically. The emotion comes first. Then the pause. Then awareness. Then the decision. You don't need more discipline if you can create more distance between feeling and spending. Because sometimes the smartest financial decision isn't saying no. It's giving yourself enough time to discover whether you actually wanted it. And then Hamna remembers where all of this started. There is a moment when scrolling stops being entertainment and becomes measurement. But maybe the goal isn't to stop looking. Maybe it's to stop letting the feed decide what enough looks like. Because the next time Hamna sees something on her screen that suddenly makes her life feel smaller, she doesn't have to reach for her wallet. She can pause and ask, did I actually want this? Or did someone just teach me to want it? Because financial freedom doesn't always begin with earning more. Sometimes it begins with wanting less of what was never yours to want. And maybe that's the question worth asking yourself too. Think about the last thing you bought because you saw it online. What did you actually want, the product, the feeling, or the version of yourself it represented? Maybe that's where your personal spending ladder begins.